All right. Good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome to CRPN Central, the podcast dedicated to dissecting out the little problems that we as an industry have. We try to talk to some of the best and the best in the industry, and we try to figure out solutions so that we can help make this industry a better place. If you haven't yet learned about CRPN, you can join for free as a clinical research site. We are very affordable as consultants for our sites, and we are very affordable, and I mean very affordable sponsors to your next clinical program. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to talk about CRPN with you. Coming on to the stage today, Ashley Mitchell, Matt Smith. Thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, quick introduction. So, Ashley, would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience? You're still muted, just so you know.
Hi, I'm Ashley Mitchell. I'm the VP of Strategic Partnerships and the Clinical Research Manager for Arizona Neuroscience Research here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm also the founder of Axiom Clinical Research Services.
Perfect. And so tell me, what does Axiom do, Ashley?
We do payment consulting services for independent research sites.
Mm-hmm. And I have heard some really good success stories from Axiom. So if you have any interest at all, CRPN isn't competing with Axiom at all. We are working together, and we want to make sure that you, our sites, have everything that you need to succeed. Reach out to Ashley if you want to learn more about Axiom. So
Thanks,
I don't know if you hear this, but it is crazy windy outside. If you hear like a howling banshee, it's not just Halloween. This is like craziness. So Matt Smith, would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, Dr. Fox. So I'm a clinical research consultant specializing in research technology and research sites of all shapes and sizes. Goal there is primarily to help drive effective end-to-end solutions to help sites scale up and manage the day-to-day processes. Over 10 years of experience within site technology specifically, and trying to establish solutions that go beyond duct tape and bubble gum and half-baked SOPs that we use to MacGyver things together is the other term I've used. And I'm just wondering too, with what Ashley's been doing, that's a lot of hats to wear. I'm wondering what she does in her free time.
Have you seen the awesome YouTube video? Ashley is an amazing athlete. I'm just going to call her Ashley the athlete because you are an athlete, Ashley. You work so hard at the gym. It's impressive.
I've come a long way in 2 years. Let's just leave it at that.
So today we are going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, tech stack solutions, or tech stack expectations, specifically for research sites. So in this podcast, it was dedicated to understanding when sites get trials awarded by sponsors and sponsors pay all this money for all of these solutions, they just keep bombarding sites with these solutions that are so study specific that it absolutely overburdens a site. By the time you get to 20, 50 active trials, that is so many different portal logins. So I was wondering, as we were going through this, so Ashley, you are currently at a site, and it sounds like from the interview you feel this pain right now, right?
I do. And it's been kind of interesting that the feedback that I've received since we recorded the initial podcast, because so many people resonated with some of the issues and challenges that we face as an independent site. So I've been trying to change my perspective a little bit on how I can see tech stack and how we can possibly work together to move forward to make it more efficient. And I'm happy to report that a couple of vendors that you introduced me to at SCRS, I was able to do something with them yesterday. I won't mention names specifically, but I did a couple of demos, and it was just really awesome to see, that there may be light at the end of this dark tunnel. So I'm really, really excited about what's to come.
Yeah, coming from a site. So when I was directing a site, my site, for one, it was kind of integrated into a healthcare system. And as a result, research was like a third priority for them. It was not important to them at all, to the point where they did not want to invest a dime into research. In fact, it turned into, you have to earn your own salary. It's on you. You have to do everything. So there are sites out there right now who have no idea what capabilities are out there for clinical research. And Matt, I have to ask you, as a clinical research consultant, have you ever run into any of those sites?
Oh, all the time. And the question is, at what point do you need technology? And to what extent? I mean, I think everyone would agree. You need an email provider right out of the bat. But then when do you add in a CTMS? When do you start to explore things like eSource? When do you think you need to be able to start expanding your team? There's a lot of different organizations out there for sites that'll help you spend your money, not as many that'll help you earn it. And Ashley can speak to that too. Actually, I was going to
I'm
ask
sure.
Ashley. I'm curious. I tried to do a deep dive on this last year and find out what is the average number of different technology solutions that you have to log into on any given trial. The industry tends to jump somewhere between 12 and 20 were the numbers I heard coming out of Tufts and then some other older sources. But when you think about everything from an email provider to CTMS, maybe it's a separate patient database, sponsor systems. When you think about it, the things that you might not even normally count, if you've got internal share drives, Google Docs even. But what would you estimate, for yourself, the average number of solutions that you use on an individual trial?
15 to 20 at least.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many of those are for one trial?
Yeah,
how many
for one
sponsors?
trial? Yeah, if you're talking about from email to from start to finish and everything he was talking about, yes.
How many are your own versus sponsor provided? Sponsor CRO?
Let's see. I would say
Ballpark, 50%.
probably, yeah, at least 50%. We have a lot of things that we initiate from our site from just like something simple like Google, right? But you have to also take into consideration that a lot of our participants have vendor or platforms that they also have to keep logins to, and we're responsible for that as well. So I'm including all of that in my number.
Mm-hmm.
So
and what about like you have to access like an EDC of sorts, go into certain, not EDC, EMR,
eCOA,
like
eDiary, yes.
Okay. And then even internal systems like EMRs or anything for medical records or things like that.
Yes. The clinic has an ECW that we have access to, requesting different medical records. But I'm talking about like with IRT, payment portals, eReg, like CTMS, the list just goes on. And then that's just for the sponsor. Then you have the site that has all of the independent, right, programs, like just something simple like Google Calendar, EMR, Gmail. And then you have the patient, the participant, who has eCOA, eDiary, like the dispensation tablet. Like it's a lot.
So when it's like 15 to 20 logins, are all 15 to 20 logins the responsibility of a single person, or is that across the whole team of the site? Like there's some regulatory people and coordinators have some, and then like the admin have others.
No, I would say it's a single person. We don't share logins.
Well, I didn't mean share logins, but I mean like a regulatory person or a coordinator may have access to EDC, whereas an administrator doesn't. They don't
No,
do EDC.
at our site we do. The administrator is, we have to have access to EDC. I feel like that's really important. That's one of the things we pointed out on our session the other day, right, with WCG, is that I really recommend that all administrators have access to EDC. If they don't do anything else, make sure they have access to that one portal.
And I know that, Ashley, when we talked to you during the interview, you were saying, like, you were kind of going through the process and listing out all the different portals that you had. And then I think that you had mentioned something about an inability, or it's hard to get a hold of a sponsor to try to get access to some of this, or like sponsor feedback. It's hard to get a response or to get someone to listen to you. How do you feel about that? Like the feedback mechanism for sites to provide feedback to sponsors for tech?
I really am grateful for the surveys they do at the end of the year, but I don't ever get any feedback from the correspondents, right? So there's nothing that tells me that they've heard me, that they validate any of my concerns. It's just a survey that takes me 15 minutes to complete. I don't get that 15 minutes back, and I don't get any feedback for what, my concerns are. Typically, we have a lot of great things to say about the CRA that we work with, but when it comes to tech specifically, e-consent, one of the biggest things that I have an issue with, is like, do you understand that this is actually delaying the progress of your study? This is delaying subject participation. Like when you have a subject in an infusion chair sitting there and we're working on they're sitting there for 4 hours already, but we have to reconsent them before we can even get started. It pushes back the whole process by however much time we're delayed at being able to access that tablet. So, I think that if you're going to give a site a survey to complete, the only fair thing to do would be to follow up with them on some of their concerns. Because if not, it's just, how do we know that the issue is actually being addressed?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for that survey, when they give it to you, do they actually tell you what it's for? Like, this is what we're going to do with the information you provide? Or is it just, hey, let us know how we did?
It's pretty much, hey, let us know how we did.
I have a gut feeling a lot of that information too is gathered just to help assess if they want to use those tech solutions in the future. But the people that make the decisions on those tech solutions and which to use on future trials are usually not the ones that are sending out the survey, and they may not even be aware that that information is being collected. But I think so much of that speaks to the issues that you're experiencing, Ashley, and that obviously are not unique to you. Speak to a lot of the issues with well-intentioned organizations that are trying to pick out solutions, and they're doing it based upon theory that, hey, this tech solution should be able to accomplish this on this trial for our site. So if you're a sponsor, CRO, and you're trying to streamline that, I want to assume that everyone's doing this very well-intentioned. But then it's not until you actually have the protocol and build out the platform and run into delays and activation, and maybe we don't have the final protocol, so everyone's scrambling to get the system built out, that theory becomes practice, and now you end up with these really common issues, like you said, the e-consent and just the trials and tribulations there. And has that even been translated? Do we need it translated? Who needs it translated, and when? And is this the most up-to-date protocol? Right, all of those issues that you don't think about at the theory level when the technology vendor is submitting a bid to the sponsor or CRO for their services. So there is this gap in that process, and it's not until that last 20% that all of them come to light when it's all being implemented and trying to be done very quickly as well, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there because I believe that everyone has good intentions on what they're trying to accomplish, and working together, but then obviously there's a lot of drive to get things started quickly, and that scramble at the end, I think, causes so many issues.
Right.
And I think that's really, really good comment, Matt. And something that really hit me recently is, as far as a site goes, site feedback, right? We send feedback to sponsors. So let's start in the very, very beginning. The very beginning, when a site is activated, we're awarded a trial, right? And here's the protocol and here's everything. And we've spent 2 years developing this trial before we bring sites on. So everything is already set in stone. It's hard to change any selection by the time a site is in the mix. And sorry, we're just going to have to deal with what has already been planned in this RFP. So that's how a site's relationship starts in this situation. And then the site says, well, this isn't going to work. That's going to work. Why is this? And then they say, oh, well, that's a really good point. We'll have to save it for the next trial because we can't fix now. We can't change things now. It's too far in. Okay. So then sites have this, and then they go through all these challenges, and then challenge after challenge, complaint after complaint. There's no one to talk to. We don't know what's going on. And then let's say finally you close the trial at the site. And like Ashley said, once a year you might get a survey and you don't know what it's for, but you just know that it's there. But then they never really look back at what happened to fix the future trial. So when a site comes into the system, it's too late. And when a site exits the system, there's no feedback mechanism to look at what happened. Therefore, we are in this constant cycle of making the same exact mistake over and over again because sites are never really a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
What are your
Ashley,
thoughts?
I was curious, Ashley, with the surveys, do you know, are those being originated from the sponsor or the CRO?
The CRO.
Okay.
I hardly ever get a survey from a sponsor. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is the role of the CRO, right? So I'm glad to hear that they're asking those questions. But then with all of the different technology solutions that they have at their disposal that they can bring in as vendors and the number of different teams, I'm picturing that survey being that final scene in Indiana Jones, what is it, Temple of Doom, where they're taking the Ark of the Covenant and wheeling it down into deep storage, never to be seen again. That might be the survey results. They're just going into a shared drive somewhere.
Yeah,
We'll
complete the
figure that out.
survey, check the box, be done. Let's say we did it. Don't really do anything with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they do probably review the questionnaires. I'm positive that they do as far as like an internal employee review or something like that. But for the tech part of it, it's usually the comment section where I get to leave feedback. It's not an actual question that's embedded within the survey. So I want to clarify that. It's something that, would you like to, or do you have any comments about XYZ? And I always put my concerns about, the issues that we've had. And I don't always make it super specific, but sometimes it's like this one issue continued to happen throughout the 3 or 4 years of this study. Is there something that we could do to provide better feedback? Contact me at this number, and then it's crickets. So I do think everybody has great intentions. There's a lot of people going multiple directions, just like I wear many hats. Everybody wears many hats in this industry, I feel like. So, I think that's why it was important for me to get to come on and share my voice today, is because hopefully someone will hear this podcast and someone will be like, oh, that's a really, that's simple, but how can we work together to get this fixed? Because it would make it so much easier on our site if we did use tech for everything. Like when it runs smoothly, it's the best option ever. But when it doesn't, then it causes a lot of other issues. So,
yeah, my experience is so much of that really just comes down to communication and working in advance. So to me, that wrap up survey it's too late. It might help in the future, but like we said, it's probably going into deep storage somewhere and it's not ever really going to see the light of day. But I have yet to really find many sponsors or CROs that work with sites maybe on an informal basis, but on a formal basis to reach out and say, hey, for this study, we're thinking about this technology. Do you have experience with it? What about this part of the protocol? This can all be summarized in the idea of the canary in a coal mine. The sites can be your canary in a coal mine to help you understand not just issues with your protocol, but then also with the technology solution with your stack. Do we try to standardize and have one piece of technology that's provided to all of the sites to use? Or do you allow the sites to use their own technology, knowing that you might have a little bit more data cleanup on the back end, but you're going to get that data quicker because maybe there isn't duplicate data entry now, right? So those types of issues that I always challenge the sponsors and CROs, bring in some sites, form those relationships and ask them in advance, help us understand this. And what I don't know if enough people in the industry really understand is that folks like Ashley, anyone on the site side, wants to make the industry better, and they are willing to help. We're a very altruistic bunch that even if we're not on this study or directly going to benefit from it, if it helps one patient, if it helps a site in the future, if it streamlines this and gets this new treatment to patients quicker, the site folks will do that just on that intention, right? So form those relationships, especially if it's within a specific indication that you're working, and being able to bounce ideas off of the site. Again, there should not ever be any promise of future studies there. We don't want to get into that nightmare of pay for play, right? But just to be able to offer those insights, and just to understand, like, hey, does this change from the draft protocol to the final protocol, or this tech solution? Is this going to make a difference? What's your experience? Have you used them on other trials? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to try to assume that, you know, this technology solution is the first time it's ever been used, and you know, we're trying to figure this out as we go. Difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? You want to learn from other people that have gone before you. So ask the sites that have most likely used that technology or heard from others. And if Ashley doesn't have experience with a certain piece of technology, I can almost guarantee she knows somebody who does, right? So this isn't that hard to figure out, but there needs to be that better, right, Dr. Fox? You know, there's so many people in the industry that are willing to give insights and comparisons and say, it's good, but maybe make sure it's set up this way, or it would be good under these circumstances and not in these. But utilize the resources around you. And again, those are free. You do not have to pay anybody to tell you those solutions.
Mm-hmm. And Ashley, I've got to ask you, are you at a point yet where you get those annual surveys? Are you getting anyone else reaching out to you, asking you for feedback? I know since you've started being active on LinkedIn.
Yes. So I'm going to share this very discreetly. I actually am really impressed with someone from a CRO. She's an amazing human being, and we've worked together on a couple of studies in the past and didn't really realize that until recently. But she's going as far as having someone from a site speak at her end of the year for her company. She's going to have a remote session where all her team can tune in, and she's bringing the feedback to her team. So just imagine the impact that will have. And I think this is specific to site payments and how much their job means to so many people across the country that work at clinical research sites, not just the staff of the sites, but the actual participants that are in the study. Because when the site, if the ball's dropped in between the CRO or the sponsor to the site, then the site doesn't have what it needs to take care of the subject, right? So the fact that we get to collaborate on this call and we have a similar mission, and that's just to make everybody more knowledgeable about the issue so we can hopefully come up with a solution, is just it really touched my heart, because I don't hear that a lot from CROs or sponsors. I don't see someone get as involved as, like, what do you think about this? You know, it really lets me know that they're validating that my concerns matter, that it's not just a site level issue. It goes way beyond just the site. And the fact that she realizes that is huge.
The bar is set so low that's phenomenal. I mean, I have not heard of a CRO doing that, but just imagine that CRO now, by doing that, is going to have this wealth of knowledge and insights that will help them in the future too, to win more sponsor awards by having those relationships, to stand out as a CRO of choice. And then by default, any sponsor they're working with is now a sponsor of choice. It's not that difficult, but not enough people are doing it. So Ashley, you were glowing when you were talking about that, because you get to share that experience with the CRO, which is amazing. And it's exciting, but then also a little frustrating that not enough other people do that, because the benefits are so clearly there, just for a little bit of insight, right? So I'm really glad that you get that opportunity. And I think that does speak to where the industry is headed too, that we see studies becoming harder to enroll, therefore more competitive. You do need to work a little bit harder to find the right sites. So sites are having a moment, and the scales have been tipped a little bit, maybe a little bit more balanced. So sponsors and CROs I'm seeing are working a little bit of overtime to win those relationships. So congrats.
I agree. I think that individual is truly iconic. Yeah. So we are going to move. So I've a two-pronged question, and I would love to hear Matt answer first and then Ashley. So First question. You've been in this industry for a while, Matt. Are you seeing the tech stack expectations improve or decline since you've started?
Wow. Expectations from sponsor CRO on utilization of tech. Yeah. Tech. And so it was a change from we want sites using more technology, and here's those solutions that you're going to use, to now we want you using more technology, but there's been pushback on using some of these, and or by utilizing it, it takes us longer to get the data because of duplicate data entry or issues with the tech. So, what are some of those solutions? Can we integrate with your solution or upload that information, right? How do we have access to your data? So it's changed a little bit, that it's not just needing you to use more tech. It's we need the data. Maybe that's tech. Maybe it's a different method. But we take, for example, one large NCI designated cancer center I was working with, and a lot of them, when we're talking about oncology studies, they're in the business of turning away more studies than they accept. So if you're a sponsor and you want to work with one of these large oncology centers, you're going to have to play ball with their solutions. So their SOPs on how they collect data is it's paper source, and they have a number of sponsors that want them to be collecting that digitally so they can get it quicker, but it actually slows them down. So they had several instances where they actually are charging the sponsor more for having to use sponsor technology. So sponsor CROs are starting to realize this now, that it's not just about having technology in place. That does not equate to getting things quicker. So it's really about understanding that site's process, that workflow, current SOPs, and why they exist, to make sure that it's a streamlined solution to get the data quicker. It doesn't have to be tech. It's about the data and the data integrity. How do we know that?
That's actually a really interesting point, Matt. And Ashley, coming from Axiom World, how would you feel about an invoiceable during startup for a logistics creation fee for tech, where your site has to create logistics around the tech of the sponsor?
Actually, we were just talking about that today. It's definitely something that we're moving into with the financial SOPs at our site, for A&R specifically, so Arizona Neuroscience. Tech is not something that we started out with in 2018. And gradually we're moving in that direction, right? Because we've got to move with the times in order to keep up. So it's something that we discussed, and we're going to discuss it in the morning at our meeting, that we definitely want to utilize a CTMS. And it would be all the better if the sponsor would reimburse us for using it. We are starting out here, like mainline. A lot of sites, I think the young lady I was speaking with yesterday said there's already 2,000 sites that use their portal. So I'm like, wow, well, hopefully we'll be 2001. But just the mindset, like I was talking about, praying about that perspective shift. It helps so much when all the stars align and we not only get to use the tech, but the tech works seamlessly, and then we get paid to use it. So that tech expectations for site. Sorry, can you hear me still?
Yep.
Okay. The tech expectations for the site has gone from, you have to use this, and this, to we would really like it if you use this, and this, but because you have these SOPs in place,
It's softened a little bit. You think it's softened?
And not a requirement.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be the breakdown, the differentiation between tech that collects data that is submissible. If you have like your own eSource, for example, or an eReg system, right? That's going to be part of the trial you need to have. Whereas the site CTMS is more for your own benefit. And ultimately it does benefit the sponsor as well, to make sure you have good records and managing your financials. But I'd be curious about the acceptance rate on getting those charges.
Hit and miss. It all depends on who you're negotiating with, unfortunately. Yeah. Sometimes, or even the trial. They're like, this sponsor won't approve this, but then you turn the page, same exact CRO, but a different sponsor. Oh yeah, this is in their book. So it's still up in the air what will and will not be paid with. And it's very tough.
Do you see that as a line item for a specific tech solution, or is that more just overhead? Like maybe it went from 35 to 37%.
Both. It can be both. So there are certain tech vendors out there who are known to be much more high effort for sites. And as a
Sure.
result, I've literally seen sites go as far as making a single line item calling out a tech vendor saying, because you're using this, please pay this annual fee.
Yeah.
Because we have to triple our data entry time, or we have to triple our financial invoicing time because you chose this solution. So unfortunately, sponsors are starting to feel a pinch on the vendors who are not doing well with sites.
Yep. Yeah, that reeks of a site or of a vendor that did not ever look at any user experience and has really only built it with the sponsor in mind.
And that maybe that's a good point, Matt. There are no consequences for these vendors. And it goes back to the cycle. It's land this contract with the sponsor. Okay, bam. And then sites activated. We work with sites. Boom, 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 boom. By the time the sites are done, we're already on to the next contract. We already landed it. So there is no disincentive to improve.
I feel like with data sharing, though, especially among sponsor CROs, and as we start to see more CROs asking Ashley what's going on in their world and for their opinion, that is changing. So, on the technology side, the first sale for a tech vendor is the easiest one to make. And the second one is, did you deliver on your promises? But then we're starting to see, obviously, feedback playing a role in that as well. And you are in a really tough spot if, as the vendor, if your technology did not improve the integrity or the speed of that data collection, right? If it was just there and you checked a box that you provided that service, but the sponsor CRO determines that it added time or it didn't decrease the risk, you have a very bad chance of getting used again in the future. But that's so 10 years ago, that approach of technology that was built just for the sponsor CRO. In my experience with different technology organizations over the years, like I said, that first sale is an easy one to make. But now I had one of the most common conversations I had with sponsors is, how do we know the sites are going to use this? How do we know that this technology is going to be implemented at the site? And that's their biggest concern. So my response to them was automatically, first reaction, thank you for asking that question. And that tells me that you are going to have a successful study because you are thinking about this the right way. Yeah. You're thinking about this as an ecosystem, not top down. As an industry, we historically have been, I think I've used this analogy with you before, Dr. Fox, that we're climate deniers, that so many organizations don't think about the impact of their own actions, that, hey, we're going to take this technology, we're going to have the sites use this, and we're going to get data quicker, or, less cleanup at the end. But they don't realize that that's adding time or maybe additional cost. The cost maybe they don't worry about as much, but the time and or risk, right? So that's starting to change. So I absolutely love hearing from sponsors when they say, how do we know sites are going to use this? Unfortunately, they're asking that question because they've been burned in the past. They've been burned from technology solutions that didn't meet their needs. There was one I was just working with, again, a very large oncology center running over 600 trials. And they said that they charged the sponsors more to use their e-requisition platforms because of the fact that it takes more time to set up. The other thing that we're not talking about here as an industry, this was new to me, so many of these platforms limit the number of user logins that are given to a site. So Ashley, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but you're given 2 logins for a platform that's required to be used for a patient visit. So you have to make sure that the 2 people that have those logins are working that day when that patient visit occurs. So how do you manage that with 40 employees and 600 trials? And those user logins, one might be in the lab, one might be a coordinator. You've got the information, the sample, the system, a pen perhaps that has to track and follow at every step of the way. This is not sustainable. You need to think about the little things like a user login and giving unlimited access to anyone at the site who wants a user login. I'm not saying the same login.
No. Or give them super admin. Give sites the ability to have super admin. And Ashley, I'll come to a question for you in a minute, but many times. I just went through it. We lost admin access to a very large sponsor's payment portal, and we were unable to send an invoice for 3 months because nobody at the tech solution would get us credentials. So now the site's still doing work. We cannot request the money because the vendors are not allowing the sites to be super admins or to add logins or to do things so that they can actually run their business and perform the trial within the sponsor provided tech. First question, Ashley, have you ever run into that where your hands were tied because you as a business could not credential your employees?
Yes. And the
How did
solution
you
to
fix
that,
it?
okay, so the solution to that is a master email. I truly believe having everything be reset to a master email. I came on and didn't have a smooth transition from previous because they moved on to another position. And so, you take 25, 30 studies and you have all these different logins for each study. And of course, my job is payments, right? Like I've got to make sure that I do the clinical research finance portion of, I mean, that's pretty much my entire day, every day. But I come on and I don't have access to anything. Like I'm having to go through every single CTA. So the last thing that I want to do is finally get the little key piece of knowledge that I need. Okay, this is the portal. I need to log in here. And then I don't have a contact that's still with the CRO that I can reach out to request access. That takes me down a certain rabbit hole. Then I've got to figure out, now I have, the previous person has access. What needs to be invoiced for? They're no longer here. How do I obtain that access? Like, it's just so much. I mean, it was such a headache the first year. I'll be quite frank. We are in a really great place now, but it's my responsibility to put processes in place for the next person. Should there be a next person that comes along, I want to make it a smooth transition for them so they don't come in and be like, they're just like a deer in headlights when I have absolutely no idea what's going on. And I don't ever want to be in a situation like that where I don't know if I'm going to be able to get invoices out, because if I don't get invoices out in set amount of time, then it's a breach of contract. And, you go through all the legalese of it. So,
And by far the worst thing you can ever do is make every email go to your PI. Because, oh my gosh, what a nightmare. So just a little bit of a backstory. If you read almost every CTA, unless the PI is like an owner of the company, the PI is an employee of the company. They are not a signatory of the company. They do not process bills unless they're authorized to do so, which most of the time they aren't. So why would you be sending administrative, contract, legal, and financial information to a PI? The answer is never, unless he's authorized, in which case he should have a different email anyway. So that's a big soapbox. Ashley, I did have a second follow-up question for you.
okay.
Have you ever rejected the use of technology when you had a trial? You're like, that, and we don't want to work with that. No, thank you. Have you ever had to do that?
Midway through the trial, yes.
Oh,
Midway. Wow. So how did they switch things around midway?
We did, because of the burden that it was on the site. So, we went in with an open mind. Yes, we'll use this technology, and let's just say 6 months in, it was more burdensome than it need be, and we couldn't seem to get the feedback that we were looking for, really, to figure out how to fix it. So we just said, you know what, we're not going to use this. We'll use paper, because we can accomplish the exact same thing more efficiently with paper, right? So as long as it's IRB approved.
I didn't even think about that, but I guess, yeah, if you're a site, you are unhappy, you can literally fire the third-party tech vendors and say, "No, we're good. We're gonna do this differently." I've never heard of that before, but it makes a lot of sense.
Are you covering that in your SOPs then, and providing those to sponsors, CROs in advance to say, here's the tech solutions that we use, our processes, maybe paper, for example, and we reserve the right to look at your solutions and consider if we want to use them, but if we change our mind at some point, we reserve that right. and or maybe even charging more for utilizing their solutions versus your own?
Yeah, unfortunately, we weren't at the time, but yes, that was a huge learning curve for us. And yeah, we have really strict SOPs in place that
Good.
are like blankets for issues that we've learned about, through trial and error. We've kind of just stumbled our way through it. But now, having those SOPs in place, yeah, it lets the sponsor know the baseline. So this is where we're starting from. We're happy to work with you until it becomes an extreme burden to the site and our participants.
Yeah. I've seen some sites even have a charge master that to use this system, here's how much we're going to charge for utilization of that platform based upon our experience and how much time it requires. And if we have to call into third-party tech support because the platform's not working and the patient's sitting here waiting or whatever the circumstance, that's an hourly rate. That is not overhead, right? Dr. Fox, I thought you'd appreciate that one. But we do see so many sites that successfully submit their SOPs. One organization had 90 pages of SOPs that they submit as part of their contract. And it allows them then to point back and say, well, here are our terms and why we're billing for that. We, agreed to do it this way, but maybe you didn't read the 90 pages. And they said they never do. We know that they don't, but it allows us just to have that clear communication of here's what you agreed to as part of the contract and budget.
And actually, out of curiosity, because your story has really piqued my interest, do you just contact your CRA and say, just so you know, we're not going to use this technology anymore?
Usually it is something that we have to follow up in an email from the CRC to the CRA that just says, hey, this happened at this visit. We didn't have time to call the help desk and spend an hour and a half on the phone. The patient was at the site. It was all really time sensitive. So this skill was utilized in place of this skill was utilized via paper instead of the actual tablet. And then that kind of puts the baseline for the issue, right? It notifies the sponsor there is an issue. And typically if I have someone on the sponsor level, like a contact that I know, I will BCC them on the email just to kind of let all parties
just a heads up, this happened. Yeah, that makes sense.
And we've received a lot of really positive feedback at our monitoring visits. It's always the CRA that understands the issue, right? And they can only verbalize so much because it has to go all the way up the chain. But whenever I get the sponsor involved in the email correspondence, it seems like, okay, then just use the paper document. Like it goes back to, let's just simplify things. If the tablet's not working, just make sure you collect the data, because at the end of the day, that's what we need. But yeah, initially everybody's like, oh, well, we really want e-consent used, or we really need these captured in the tablet. And unfortunately, that's just not always possible if there's a glitch or if it's not connecting to the internet. I mean, there's a series of things that could possibly be going on but it's not because we didn't try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you made every due diligence effort, and the technology just did not solve the problem that you needed. And in fact, it created more problems. Amazing.
Right. But I think what I saw yesterday in the demo, that technology really is the answer. And we're doing everything that we can to encompass that, because we want it to be easier for everyone. And if the sponsor needs access to the data at 1 a.m., we're not here, we need it in a portal other than the EDC to let them see that this is actual source. I can't tell you how many times someone reaches out and they're in a different, they're in a time zone across the country or across the world. And it would be awesome to have all of that data somewhere that they could access that's not just the EDC. So.
Yeah, I think Matt said a couple really cool quotes. One was, technology works until it doesn't. It's great. It's a great solution until it doesn't. And what was your quote? You said something about the industry. The industry, this is one of the most innovative industries in the world. As long as nothing changes, we're good.
Yeah, industry of innovation as long as nothing changes. So we're really quick to listen to ideas and like the theory behind it. But then we realize when we try to put it into practice or look at it maybe a little too long, that there's going to be challenges and some work involved.
So I know, and I've seen it kind of morph into a couple different generations of this, but it seems like the industry's response to this problem, tech stack burden on sites, has been, let's just make a meta login. Let's give you another login that can take care of all of your other logins. So I know that we've got one RIP Versatrials. Kind of missed that. The purple Noah Hazan, he was great. And then we've got, of course, the big one now, IQVIA Technologies One Home. They're trying to do this big consolidation of single sign-ons for all of the sponsors who are trying to sign up. We've got Lido Link and Stephanie Abbott's group trying to do like an internal site portal login group. So the solution has not been to reduce the number of sign-ons or to have open API or to have any kind of interoperability, but rather just to try to manage passwords. So we're getting like validated password vaults pretty much. What do you think about that as a response to the challenges that we have?
Seems like low-hanging fruit, doesn't it? That we're not really addressing the hard issues, but if it's just a password manager, there's benefits and it's necessary and it helps. Is it treating the symptom or the cause, though?
There's like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start. You know, bite-sized pieces. What's the saying? Easiest way to eat it, or the way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. You know, we'll work on reducing technology and maybe integrations, interoperability between sponsor and site platforms in the future. But for now, what can we do to just take that first bite?
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Ashley? If you had a choice of solutions, whether it's, can we please just reduce the number of logins that we have, like interchange, so we don't have to duplicate and have different logins, or if we could just log in once and have that system manage all of our passwords? I mean, what do you think? Does it solve the same thing, or
the latter would be the ideal, to have to log in once and have that connect to all the systems. I'll just keep hoping for that. Because the single sign-ons don't typically work on our end. There's always something that helps.
And I've always wondered about this, these meta logins that we have, where it's supposed to manage all of your logins and all of your passwords. How do you deal with that and multi-factor authentication? Like, does the system, it can't MFA a master password, does it? But then the password link just breaks.
No, that's outside of my pay grade.
Yeah, that's we don't really use that, other than one sponsor has a CRO that we work with that uses the single sign-on, and I don't do multi-factor authentication for anything else. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but it may be outside of my pay grade too.
Well, I mean, some of them, like a lot of the regulatory people, they'll do MFAs either through emails or texts or whatever it is. But I don't know how you SSO MFAs, because the whole point is to authenticate every single time you log in, or every 25 log. So it seems like, oh, here, Kelvin, here we go. Kelvin, I haven't seen him in a while. Kelvin, he says single sign-on requires some MFA. So are we solving the problem? If we still have to MFA when we do single sign-on things. Yeah, it's good to see you, Kelvin. It's been a while, my friend. So I don't know. That's one question. So I wonder what we are solving as a result of these solutions, if we have to do, say, certain security things. And maybe that's the other thing, is, are the solutions that we're trying to get, are they bypassing necessary security features for tech?
There's a lot of lift involved too. I don't know that that's a real easy solution when I'm thinking single sign-on that requires a separate setup for every different solution. And a lot of times there's a cost involved. Some of the SSO options are free, but having done this in the past, it can be a couple of month process just to get that going. And there's a cost involved more often than not. And then anytime that there's changes, that will impact it. The bigger question, though, for single sign-on, who bears the responsibility for payment on that? And it depends, I think, on the solution. If that's a site solution, like a CTMS that you want to integrate, or let's just say, EMR with a CTMS, or maybe even EDC. But there is a better question, because if EDC is sponsor provided, EMR is the site-based platform, who picks up the bill? And now you're paying for a potential single sign-on integration that is only used on one trial. So it makes sense, if you're going to set up an SSO and go through that whole process and cost and time to establish that, it makes sense if it's using a couple of systems that you're continuously using and plan on in the near future, or long-term future, right? But for a single study, if someone else is going to do it and it's part of the package of the trial, that this is going to be set up for every site, that obviously makes sense. For single sign-on, that would be established. But I find that more often than not, it's the sites that are having to drive that.
Kelvin, our guest here, said, do you have FHIR APIs to ensure interoperability with site tech stacks? That's a good question, Kelvin. That's above my pay grade, and I'd have to take a look at it. But and that brings up a good point, is to do what we're trying to do for interoperability. To your knowledge, are there any industry standards at all that we have yet?
No. And
So it's
APIs
all over the
are,
place.
yeah, APIs are a blessing and a curse too. I spoke on this last year. Prior to APIs, it was all custom integration, and there was a hefty price tag involved. So wanted to integrate, trying to think of an example, EMR with a site CTMS. Wanted to pull in some patient data and visit data as well. So we were able to do it. But 10 years ago, that was $50,000. I don't know what that is today, but it was a lot of work. And that was the initial upfront price tag. Then there was the recurring cost of maintaining it every time those systems are updated. Now, that was set up for two systems to talk to each other, and it was, again, the site driving that. But it was something that was going to be used every single day. Then the industry started to move towards APIs. Great, here's 10, 20 data fields that we will create as an open API that these can get synced up with anyone you want. And it allowed the technology providers to say, hey, yeah, we can integrate. We've got an open API. And the devil's in the details, though. It wasn't until you dug in to find out that those 10 or 20 data points do not go far enough. But it helped you get the sale. So now, how much motivation is there for a tech vendor to go beyond those 10 or 20 points fields that they already have, and do more because the client wants it? Not much is the answer. They do not want to have to do it because we have this open API. It takes care of 80% of the needs, but we end up finding that the other 20% are either custom, specific to that organization, maybe because it's Epic versus Cerner in this field, and it's the details where you end up getting a lot of additional cost, a lot of additional work. It kind of takes us back to that custom dev standpoint of the API really doesn't go far enough. So I ended up in a previous role kind of taking on the approach of, yes, we have an open API, but let's look at what you want to bring in, because there's only about 3 to 4 points that you would benefit from bringing this in. And I don't think that is worth you having to pay for those data points. For what we're trying to accomplish here, the API doesn't go far enough. But then there was not an audience, there was not a receptive audience to listen to doing any additional API integrations. That's, by the way, just talking about the one-way sync. When we're talking about a bi-directional flow of, are we just sending data? Are we also receiving it? How often? Which data point is going to be the source, that if that gets updated, then it updates everything else. But if it's changed in the secondary system, does that then change the primary? All of these nuance, like, again, devil is in the details. So it was a good step forward, but it also uncovered a lot of other peripheral issues. It was a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole. So it allowed this nice uniform response of saying, hey, we've got open API, we can do this integration and make life easier for you, and remove duplicate data entry, or maybe even just single sign-on help. And more often than not, it does not go far enough. And it's the sites that end up paying for it and having additional burden that they don't find out until the deal's already done. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that Ashley piped up and said, if the tech doesn't work, we just tell them we're not going to use it anymore. I love that story. I love that story. So we're almost on the top of the hour, and honestly, I'm walking away from here a little more confused. Normally, when we do a wrap up podcast, it's like, oh, yeah, I learned something else. But now it's like, well, I learned that the industry, at least some unicorns in the industry, are starting to listen to sites and they're engaging with sites to try to improve, which is, it's just heartwarming. I think that's my favorite part about it. But the other part of it is, we came from chaos, and our solution to chaos was a band-aid, but then as a result, we're really not getting any further than we were before. So I guess my final question, and I ask you to wrap this up into your conclusion, is um, what can we do to improve or reduce tech stack burden at clinical research sites?
I'll start. So I would love it if I could know the platforms and all the technology that we are expected to use from the pre-site selection visit. That would give us a great idea of what's to come, right? I also would just have someone maybe create a position within the CRO to have somebody specifically check in with sites to see how they can support. I feel like we should have a tech contact at the CRO level, because a help desk just doesn't cut it. And to have 6 or 7 different vendors that we have help desk numbers to, or an email, not even a number, but just an email, that provides its own set of challenges, but that would be really helpful. And then constant communication. I think that not only having a CRA, but to just be able to communicate. I have one study that their CTM is copied on almost all important correspondence. And it's been so helpful from not only technology issues, but payments. Just we love to communicate. We love to feel that we are heard, and we love to sing praises when things work well. I have so many wonderful studies that could be amazing if we just ironed out some of the kinks, and we're on our way. I truly believe that, but we aren't there yet, and so it feels important to me to share that if we get a study from someone, not only do we want to know up front what to expect, but we really want to know how we can collaborate to make it easier for everyone.
Perfect. Matt?
Yeah, I would just add that if you are a site, be vocal, know what you are comfortable with, draw your line in the sand, and have your SOPs in place that you can point to. But know what you like and what you don't like and why, and share that, especially the why. That information, if you provide that upwards, sponsors and CROs, is only going to help. And be very vocal about the systems that you like. I'm thinking of organizations out there too. On the other end, the second thing we can do is just wait. Because technology providers, there's a few really good ones out there. I think of organizations like Viva that are thinking about a platform approach, connecting sponsors, sites, tying it all together as an ecosystem model, right? And as they have success with that model, it's only going to drive others to adopt it. So we will end up seeing more tech vendors that are thinking holistically, that it's not sponsor tech, it's not site tech. Why does it have to be one or the other? It could be everything. And reduce the amount of technology and or integrate it better, create these platforms that do share data and manage compliance and help standardize, look at data access, right? So it'll come. It's going to take some time, but the sites can help by being vocal about what they like and don't like, supporting those organizations that they're a fan of, and managing it upwards. If you are a fan of a tech solution, the best thing you could do is put that bug in the ear of your monitors and anyone you're talking to at the sponsor that, hey, this made our life a lot easier.
Yeah, this really helped. Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. I agree. So speak up. I always say at the end of everything, share your voice. If we share our voice and we help each other grow, this industry will be so much better. So sites, don't be afraid to speak up tactfully. Don't go complaining and yelling all the time. Nobody's going to like that, but be tactful about it. And importantly, we're going to go and wrap this up. So Ashley, Matt, thank you so much for coming on to this for an excellent interview. Now I have even more questions. I'm probably going to end up calling you and asking you more questions. To all of those who are listening, thank you so much for listening to CRPN Central. If you're subscribed to YouTube, you might see a very special episode of CRPN Central that just dropped today. And a little hint, it does include a robot, and that robot was casted by Samantha Register herself. So check out that. It's on document storage. It's great. We'll have those guests on here later. Dr. Fox, CRPN Central. Please like, comment, subscribe, share your voice. I'll see you next time.